First of all, as always, thank you to everyone joining us today from across the country and around the world. I'm Michael Higgs, the Virtual Program Manager here at Conscious Capitalism. And on behalf of the entire CCI team, we always appreciate you taking time to learn and grow in community with us. Today, we're excited to be sharing space with Haleh Fardi and Melanie Shaw. As many of you know, Conscious Capitalism is a global movement of CEOs, presidents, founders, board members, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders from diverse industries, backgrounds, and perspectives who are committed to the shared purpose of elevating humanity through business. Several times a month, we offer virtual gatherings like this one as a way for the community to see how this philosophy takes shape in the leadership journeys and the business practices of those in our network. A few housekeeping details. Today's session is going to be about 45 minutes. We'll be in conversation, Ale and Melanie and I, for about 20 to 25. And then we're going to transition to audience questions for the last 10 minutes. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen to submit any questions. It just helps me. It's a little easier to keep track of than questions submitted to chat, but if you forget, I'll keep an eye on both. For the final 15 minutes, so from 45 to the top of the hour, we will welcome any persons from our Conscious Capitalism membership community to join us for a member Q&A. So you'll join us on screen and you can ask your questions directly to our guests. To set up today's conversation, we're going to spend a little time putting the capitalism back in conscious capitalism. And to do so, we're going to spend some time exploring how to harmonize the principles of conscious capitalism with traditional business paradigms to enhance bottom line profits. And we're going to dig into what Haleh and Melanie call the financial flywheel. And today's guests are very well equipped for this conversation and our journey together. Haleh Fardi is the co-founder and chief visionary officer at ProCFO Partners, with a career spanning roles such as CFO, COO, and president. Haleh brings extensive experience in improving operations, driving business growth, and maximizing profits through strategic financial management. Melanie Shaw, MBA, is the strategic financial professional who brings innovative energy along with powerful strategy, vision, and collaboration through a passion for service, impact, and partnerships. Her 20-plus years of expertise includes a broad range of industries, including multi-unit restaurants, consumer packaged goods, association management, and manufacturing. Welcome. Delighted to have you both here with us today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to all who've joined the webinar. I want to start today's conversation in kind of setting this up for the audience's benefit, some of our earlier conversations. We talked about an old paradigm and a new paradigm, and how ProCFO, Melanie, and Haleh are moving businesses towards a new paradigm. And Haleh, you actually keep something on your desk as a reminder of the old paradigm, which I'd love for you to just sort of share with the audience, because I thought it was
Sure. It's not just a reminder of the old paradigm. It was on my desk for a purpose. And it says, bigger, better, faster, cheaper. And this was front and center. So if somebody would come into my office, whether I had this when my title was controller, they knew the conversation better be about being bigger, better, faster, or cheaper, or I wasn't interested. And that's the old paradigm. Right.
amazing.
Yeah, so it's real.
And you, so in moving us towards, I think you actually have a slide to share with us that summarizes that old paradigm and that paradigm and how you and your business think about this financial flywheel and its implications for business.
I do. And I'm going to now be here. I'm not very PowerPoint savvy, but you can see this is that old paradigm. And in our role, every time we ask someone, what is a CFO? Many people, even in our company of CFOs, will have different lenses. because just like doctors, CFOs have a variety of different specialties. But what it really comes down to is, what are the financial functions in your organization? And where does a CFO sit? And what is their impact in an organization? And many people still look at this as a linear hierarchy, from bookkeeper to accountant to controller. Many people think their controller is their CFO because they're smaller, or they don't know the strategic impact of a CFO. These are the old functions and how people see it in the old paradigm. Most organizations have one or two of these when they're smaller, small to medium businesses. So, but let's talk about the role of the CFO. Here's another linear way to look at the role of the CFO. And so most people think CFOs are about giving you financial reports. We're looking at your profit. We're looking at your cash management. But none of this works without looking at revenues and bottom line and what are we really trying to accomplish here. And here, as you can see, sum of purpose is one of the main things we talk about. So that's the new paradigm. Old CFOs were reporting and cutting costs and making sure that the shareholder value, I mean, my job was protecting shareholder value, right? That was what we were named until some legal things happen for the ones who are older, like Enron. And I'm like, wait, there's other stakeholders here, right? That we need to pay attention to. And so that's kind of when the shift really happened, also as culturally shift was happening. So when we built and decided to bring it formally into the marketplace, we were very, very inspired by Jim Collins's quote and his methodology around the flywheel. And we were saying this is not linear, they're all dependent on each other. And actually, if you do this well, and if your reporting is done well, then actually it helps cash management. If cash management is done well, it helps profit improvement. So they create momentum for each other, and we created the financial flywheel. So this is about taking in all stakeholders and really having a holistic and all-encompassing financial framework for management and growth. And that's the flywheel.
So to help our audience understand a little bit more about the flywheel concept, can you explain how you interpret the financial flywheel within a company's specific industry or business model?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Every company needs these 6 components to function, to have a stable, really foundational framework. Every company. So my career of 5 years or 15, depending on how I want to age myself, and Melanie's and our 70 CFOs and our hundreds of clients, every time we go into a company, we need to know what their goals are. We need to know what their business model is. We need to know what they have in systems and processes and make sure it's done. So it's actually industry agnostic. So this is the framework that you need. It's like saying, is this building a Frank Gehry building, or is it a Frank Lloyd Wright building? You still need a foundation. You still need the beams. You still need a ceiling, a roof, and windows, and all of that. And that's the financial flywheel is foundational. And then we bring in industry specialties if we need to.
And with these various slices or components, I'll call them spokes.
Yes.
Probably more apropos for the graphic. But considering the different spokes, is it safe to assume that depending on a company's growth stage, that there might be pieces in the financial flywheel that are more crucial than others? And if that is the case, how do you kind of keep track of the priorities over time?
So when we work with clients, we work where their immediate need is. There's a fire. So if someone's having a fire and they can't make payroll, we don't say, so what's your 5-year goal? They're like, can you put out the fire first? Right? Foundational goals and strategy is first. Absolutely. Why are we here? What is the purpose of this organization? What is the outcome we hope to achieve? I mean, that is foundational. But we always prioritize their immediate need. Now, The concept of the flywheel from Jim Collins is you take any one of these out, your wheel does not turn.
Mm.
So you can have great goals and strategies. If you're not profitable and you don't have cash, it's not going to turn. Right? If you have a great goal and you have a lot of money, but you don't have a business model, it's not going to turn. So that's the whole flywheel concept, is these are all dependent on each other and actually create momentum.
And highlighting the point of momentum, or the revving up of the financial flywheel. Are there any specific metrics or KPIs that you closely track?
Each flywheel has KPIs. So
Okay.
each has KPIs. So goals and strategies, we take a look at 5-year goals, and goals do not have to necessarily be measurable targets. So I will actually show you that here. So when we do 5-year goals, a lot of times you talk to a company and you say, what's your 5-year goal? And they say, I want to be $1 billion. I want to be $50 million. Right? And we say, okay, why? That's a measurable target. Do you fail at $49 million? So what are we trying to accomplish? And then we talk about, I want an exit strategy. I want to be the best known brand in the Midwest. I want to be the largest green janitorial supplier in the Southwest. And then we say, okay, how do we achieve that? Right? So,
Yeah. I want to jump back to something you had mentioned about purpose, and when you engage with a client, if I heard you correctly, you really want to understand their higher purpose. Why do they exist, right?
yes.
Is there a process of discovery that you go through with a client, or how do you put that? How do you sort of surface the higher purpose of an organization that you're engaging with?
It all depends on if we see there's a void or not. Some organizations we've come into and they're using scaling up, great game of business, EOS, they have vision traction organizers, and they've done this. What we do is we look at it through a financial lens. Is this really achievable? Do you have, as you said, your KPIs and metrics, the levers that are going to get you there? Some organizations have no clue. So either we work with them and start with a strategic planning session in the first month, or we do a workshop with them, or when we're kicking off, because they have an immediate fire that they need to put out, in our
Yeah.
kickoff session, we do a mini workshop just for us to onboard and get some clarifying direction. And that's how we work with them. So we do it either way, whether it's formal engagement or informal as part of our onboarding.
And just again, continuing with the thread of conscious capitalism's tenets, Melanie, I'd love to bring you into the conversation here to answer a question around stakeholder orientation. What process or how do you ensure alignment and buy-in from other departments or stakeholders related to this concept of the financial flywheel? Like, what does that look like? How do you kind of get people aligned and bought in and excited?
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. With the financial flywheel, we go about getting the others involved. We don't necessarily show them the financial flywheel, the individual department leaders. We work with the CEOs, the founders, or whoever we're working directly with, and share that with them in our processes and find the best way to work through the management teams with that. A lot of it comes down to different conversations and having conversations around those specific items with a specific, either the leadership team or those individual directors that are heads of those departments, whether it be human resources or the people department, or working with the sales director and on the revenue model that we have, and having discussions around that. And also sharing what it looks like with the organization, with transparency, and what we're all trying to work towards, so that everybody has the good information to work with on that, to get that buy-in.
Wonderful.
Really that way.
Well, it sounds like you probably engaged in a lot of conscious conversations around, the higher purpose of the organization. You're enrolling all of those stakeholders. and I would imagine that goes successfully many times. But there's probably some roadblocks or challenges that you might encounter in actually implementing this flywheel. What is your approach to address those challenges when they come up?
Yeah. The approach to address the challenges, it's really asking questions and learning the why behind there, and what challenges they're facing, that we might have more information on, or others in the organization might have more information on, and sharing that with them to help bring everybody to that same understanding.
Amazing.
And Michael, also remember when you said which is most important, we say goals and strategies, right? So whether we show them the flywheel or not, because in some organizations, we always share it. But if we do a formal goals and strategy session, and I'm going to come back here, when you're talking about the stakeholders here, depending on the size of the company, goals and strategy might be the organization's leader. Revenue model could be the leader in sales. Systems and processes is a leader in ops. Reporting is the leader in finance, reporting cash management here. So they're all already understanding that. Operations has HR, which is talent, and the employee stakeholder side of it. So they're all connected there in terms of having that. And what's really important here is one of the biggest issues that we see is when marketing is selling something different than, marketing something different than sales is selling, right? And it happens all the time. But if you sit here and look at their business model and look at their customer segments, here, I'll come here for you. If you're looking at their business model and you're looking at their customer segments, you're looking at their channels to their customers, you're looking at their market position, suddenly sales and marketing are actually married to each other. And they're really supporting. And then if you wanted to take that flywheel concept further, you could go into and build their sales flywheel, which is not us, but the sales team would do that, and marketing would build the marketing flywheel, all supporting their organization's goal. So that's how we address the different stakeholders and include them. And it's all part of us working with them through the financial lens. How much money do you need? The marketing says, I need $200,000 or $50,000 for trade shows, right? And then we're talking to sales and saying, but the channel to your trade shows is only 10% of your clients and only 15% of your profit. Is that really where you want to spend the money? And then marketing doesn't say, well, sales isn't closing my leads. We're like, yeah, we're closing them, but it was only 10% of the leads, right? So that's how we actually work with all of the stakeholders together.
And Michael, when we're working with our clients, we're sitting as their CFO in their organizations. We're not doing interim, we're not doing project, we are sitting in there. So we're helping to drive these throughout the year, working with their next year's initiatives for 2025, checking back in on them quarterly, and then also at the same time, revisiting the 1, the 3, the 5 years for any changes that there might have been in the business.
Wonderful. I want to come back to, again, just kind of actually stay on the theme of stakeholders. And on the other side of the table, the shareholders, right? Can either of you describe a specific instance where prioritizing stakeholders over shareholders led to a positive outcome for one of your clients?
Absolutely. And more than one instance, but the one that I always like going back to is the shareholder who wants profitability, the owner of the company who wants profitability and offers people salaries at market and benefits at minimum. And as we were having turnover, there's like no market. And we're saying the market is actually an employee's market. We suggest some non-traditional benefits, like for retention, after 3 months, give a 4-day week, or after 2 years, do different things. And what we had to show him is his turnover had actually cost him, this was a smaller organization, his turnover had cost them $650,000 in that year alone.
Wow.
So imagine just at 50,000, how many employee how much he could have paid. And we showed him, we did analysis and said, if you paid everybody 10% more, it would be less than that. And then what percentage of it would we still retain, or what percentage would we still lose? So we actually ended up focusing on giving better life balance to the employees with non-financial benefits, as well as making sure that we were above market rates and focused truly on the happiness of our talent. And it ended up saving money for the shareholder. It ended up creating efficiency in operations. And people think, well, why isn't HR doing your finance? And we're like, well, everything touches money, whether it's on your balance sheet or not.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's how, from the financial flywheel and consciousness, we're doing that also, is we're helping to bring that consciousness throughout the organization from the financial with regards to whatever department it is and how we've worked with that before and seen that.
Yeah, I think you're both illustrating very conscious business practices, and it sounds like your clients are open to some of your suggestions and the things that you're highlighting in your client engagements. I'm wondering, do you have a means of measurement for these conscious business practices that are outside of kind of the traditional financial metrics, which may be more of kind of holistic KPIs? Or
Yeah, yes and no. Yes and no. So do I have traditional ones? No, there's two ways that we can actually measure it. One of it is a great example of a company that had been hovering around 3 million for the last 10 years. And when we started working, and their employees were really taxed, right? They were working really hard. And we did some shift in compensation, as well as some shift in how they did program delivery. And in the year that we worked with them, their revenues jumped to 6 million. And their turnover. So there's metrics that we were counting, but it had to do with what we did in systems and processes to create that benefit. So we actually had financial. How do we measure happiness? You know, how do you have to go externally to still some traditional ways to measure employee satisfaction score, right? But they're happier, right? And I joke with them, if I ever take this back, I'm like, better actually means people. The better actually means people. Better actually means purpose. And so that's how we look at it.
And you see the joy and the passion that becomes a part of their culture. And the more it's there, the more it filters throughout the organization, the employees, they're happier, as well as the customers, and really doing some exciting things. Because a lot of the organizations that we're working with are at a point to where they're going to that next level. And what does that look like for them? So the minute then this starts to move, and the flywheel, again, that we've talked about, the momentum, when some of those things start to happen, you see that change in the teams and the excitement as it starts to move, which is really great.
So the non-traditional way, thank you, Melanie, the non-traditional way that I would stress in any organization is that your core values aren't a poster on the wall, right? That people would have their core values and then it's written. For us, when we have our core values, it's how we match the CFOs who we consider pro-CFOs. So it's part of our hiring and recruiting process is the core values. When we are selecting if we are going to work with a client or not, we have to make sure we're a value match with our client. We had a client in Texas that we used to refer as she who cannot be named, should not be named, right? We couldn't wait to get out of that engagement fast enough, right? So now we make sure that if a client says, we say, what is your culture? This is a real quote of how we work. Now, when we say, what is your culture, as we are doing our interview, if we're the right solution for the client and if we want to work, if they answer, if someone comes in my office and tells me, I need to tell you my truth, they're out of this company, right there, we're like, we're not the right solution for you, you know? So we already know that. So this is a non-traditional metric. Are the core values how they're recruiting? Are their core values really their operating guidelines? And are the core values really how they deliver product? And that's all stakeholders, right? So that's how we work. When we're doing financial statements, we're saying, are we being collaborative and including all stakeholders? Are we striving for excellence? Is this the best that we can do? You know, are we including we do all of that. All the pillars of conscious capitalism are actually embedded in our core values. And we measure against it. Performance is measured against it. That's a non-financial metric that you can use to look at the effectiveness of the flywheel and also your conscious leadership.
Amazing. Again, just looking kind of maybe, well, thinking about the systems that are embedded within organizations, whether it's OKRs or, you know, internal KPIs or balanced scorecards. How do you align the financial flywheel concept with some of those other strategic frameworks or methodologies? Is it a natural alignment, or is there some work to do there?
I don't know if Melanie, you want to speak to it, but I can speak to 2 or 3 of them. Oh, so we are partnered with EOS. It's Entrepreneurial Operating System. Entrepreneurial Operating System is actually systems and processes. It's a subset of the financial flywheel. Remember, we believe it's actually your foundational framework. We are speaking at Great Game of Business, you know, shortly. So we partner with Scaling Up. We're, you know, partnered with Sales Acceleration for the sales side of it. Where these are all just like we're the financial flywheel. The financial flywheel is a spoke in the greater flywheel as well. So best practices are best practices across the board, and we've integrated some of them, and some of them is not our zone of genius, for what you may say. And that's when we partner with others for that side of it. We can't build your sales processes, but we can partner with people who do that, you know, to be able to get the right metrics and KPIs
Wonderful.
for that organization.
Just high level, what's one piece of advice that you would give aspiring CFOs looking to integrate conscious business practices into their work?
Now, that's a tough one. Well, one piece of advice to aspiring CFOs.
2 or 3.
I don't know that I would give us to aspiring CFOs. Every time I want to answer, I want to say, love what you do. You know, I mean, every time I thought, I go find it, learn, it's our core values. Want to be impact driven, you know, relentless execution. I used to tell my daughter, do your work like your life depends on it. And she said, I don't want my life to depend on taking out the trash. Right? So, but relentless execution is actually a core value. Do a good job. Right? Be proud of your outcome, you know, partner with people. You don't know everything. So, but if you do that all with joy, I think that's the advice I would give. Love what you do or do something else.
Yeah.
Because CFO isn't an easy job, right? You're the conductor, but you're actually not playing the instruments.
Right. And as you said previously, money touches everything, right?
Money touches everything.
So, when the money's light, there's probably a lot of knocks on the CFO door.
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, I also think you're speaking a bit to higher purpose, right? Is understanding the core values and our core motivations that drive to engage in business.
Yeah.
So, you on your website, you had an interesting question, which I want to put forth to the group. You actually posed the question, how can CFOs become the profit center for the business? So if you could just share a little bit maybe on that.
Absolutely. My inner purpose was also being able to provide for my family. You know, I'm a single mom. And so in order to want to get paid more, right, I had to make sure I was a good return on investment. So in our organizations, when we're doing contracts, we don't take a retainer, we don't sign a long contract because we have to be value driven. So how do you become value driven? You have to pay attention to the revenue model. You have to be able to identify new segments for revenue. What are the missed opportunities in an organization? And that's how, when we're there month after month after month, we're actually a value proposition. We don't sell access to our time. And that's how, then you can take a look and see, Melanie, you can speak to that, had one client where they had, everything was Excel from their 50 little areas, and they had 4 staff just taking all these Excel spreadsheets and putting them in a new Excel spreadsheet to then, right, Melanie? Do you remember them?
Yep.
So just saying, how about we just have them all fill the one master Excel spreadsheet and we don't need these 3 other people? How about that? So
Well,
that's how
a lot of time they've done successfully these things for a while or built it up this way, but it's time to look at it in a new way to take them to that next level. And a lot of them haven't seen what that looks like before. So it's helping to understand where they're currently at and then showing them the right new things to close various gaps.
Haleh, we touched on this in one of our earlier planning conversations, but can you share with the audience your journey of conscious capitalism, how you found out about the philosophy and what inspired you to
absolutely.
have a conscious business, ProCFO?
I will. I think this is really a key differentiator. I was always a conscious business. I wasn't conscious about it. So, great people, I want to name them because they've had an impact in my life with conscious capitalism. Alison Porter is from Lockton Insurance. We were in a networking meeting. Her partner's name was Sarah Hermes, and again from Lockton Insurance. And we were doing a networking meeting in Chicago. And I was just launching ProCFO Partners, and I was talking about why we're doing it and what we're doing it. And she said, "Hey, have you heard of conscious capitalism? You should read the book." Everything you're saying are the pillars of conscious capitalism. Everything you've talked about, your background, is how you've done you've been a conscious leader. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I read the book and I'm like, why don't more people know about this? Because there are many people who are doing this just unconsciously.
Yes.
Then it's like being reactive versus proactive. It's not being deliberate and intentional in the impact you're having, right? And so it wasn't part of our recruiting. Now we recruit consciously.
Amazing.
So my journey is thanks to Alison Porter and Sarah Hermes from Lockton.
All right, shout outs.
Shout out.
Yeah, I want to spend a little bit of time with some questions that our audience has submitted. Greg Sampson asks, what are the metrics that you use to measure success? And we can ask Greg if that needs some clarification. Let's
Yes.
ask for it, but if
I would
not,
like to
take it.
Success in what?
Okay. So Greg, success in what? If you want to just drop that into the Q&A, we'll get to that. Chris Schaefer asks, have you had a client, quote, mature from the bottom line focus to include people and planet? So again, I think the question is to go beyond that bottom line and almost consider people and planet as the stakeholder ecosystem.
Yes, I'm going to say yes. Some of it because the talent is now demanding it. Cannot hire without taking them in as a stakeholder. You cannot hire them just as a minion or a cog in your wheel. It just won't work anymore. So some of it is not us. The talent is actually demanding them to be elevated beyond the bottom line. You have to consider your talent's needs. The planet is a different situation. So much of it has to do, they're forced either politically, because we've had people who've had to elevate because they had no choice. Litigation has been put around them. But personally, when we work with them, absolutely. We are very conscious. And I have a great story of a graphite company that had no interest in being planet conscious. One of the new segments that we introduced to them, revenue segments, was if they took their byproduct and put it in a pressure tube, they actually had a new line to produce because they were graphite, coal. And they were the only ones who could do that. So by saying, well, what are you doing with your waste? And they're like, you should have been in that room, right? Like, waste schmaced, We're like, okay, but what did people do with it? And we found out those wood chips can be turned into coal under pressure. It could become graphite, and they would be the only producers of that. So not only did they not have waste disposal anymore, but we were able to help them with a little bit of focus. And in that exact conversation, the owner who did care, the team didn't. It was a second or third generation company said, when I used to go to the reefs in Florida, there were reefs. And now when I take my children to the Caribbean, there are no reefs. So that came out of that conversation. And
Amazing.
it became a 3-year plan to find that pressure tube. And we actually did it in the first year. They identified it and started doing it in the first year. So that's one. I hope that answers the question. You have to be conscious. You have to be deliberate.
Yeah, yeah. And I know we had touched on this before the webinar started, that we're in the midst of a talent crisis. And you mentioned the importance of, I mean, we have to change our approach to retaining talent, capturing talent. And it sounds like, consider all things in the stakeholder ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I do want to come back to Greg's question. Greg is asking, so to clarify, what should we as top level executives set as benchmarks?
For achieving your 5-year goal, I'm going to go through 3 so we don't go back.
Run through a couple. He does qualify, as related to the pillars of conscious capitalism. So yeah, you run with
As related to pillars of conscious capitalism. In conscious leadership, as a benchmark, I want to make sure that all of your team knows and understands your vision is articulated, and they don't just buy in, they believe in it. Right. So how do you measure that? You measure that when they're doing their budgeting, when they're setting their quarterly goals and plans, that it's always making sure that you're on the path to your long-term goal. So the way we measure that is we run a lean business canvas, and I'll share that with you, with our teams every year, and make sure that all team members, especially the management level, is answering the same way. Because people don't realize throughout the year your business model is changing. Because COVID, because market conditions are changing. So we make sure that when we're building these key metrics, they're all stakeholders in the company, especially the leadership team, or the people who manage processes or people, know what we're trying to solve here, and that these key metrics tie to that. So it changes. That's what I was saying, to what, right? And to what purpose? So that to me speaks to conscious leadership. The metric is, are you doing this exercise with your team? Do you have an articulated? And then I can go on and on and on. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it does. I think you've delivered to Greg's question. Thank you for the question, Greg. And apologies, it took me a second to kind of formulate that and present it to our guests. Next question, I want to just jump to, this is more of a shout out from Chris, just that conscious business practices yield profit, innovation, and growth.
Absolutely.
So yes, 3 nodding heads there, Chris. She did have one question about your slide, the example of sales and marketing. It was problem and solution.
Yes.
And she says, is that true for each element of the financial flywheel? Is it set up as problem, solution, problem, solution?
No, I've never thought of it that way, frankly.
Okay.
We are there to solve problems, but more than solving problems, we're there to make sure you have the proper framework. Because when we have cash flow issues, right, it's a symptom. It's a symptom of wrong systems and processes, or reporting, or we're selling the wrong things. People think that whatever brings you the most revenue is your most profitable. We've had organizations that they're going for the big top line number, but every time they make that sale, they're losing money. So we're like, you're going to be a much more profitable company. So to answer your question, yes and no, where there is a problem and we're solving for the solution, but the solution is the flywheel.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I think in some cases too, as I've looked at it with clients, it's identifying key areas in each of those portions of the flywheel that we have to identify at some point. So we might not be doing it now in the short term, but we don't want to lose sight of it in our planning going forward. So with each of those, kind of having the key initiatives or not problems, if you will, but opportunities or things that we might address later on in each.
Thank you for that. Thank you
If
both.
I was going to relate it to conscious capitalism, I would say it's conscious leadership, right? That's how I would look at the problem solution, and being a conscious leader is, are you solving the symptom or are you solving the cause? And that's how I would look at problem solution.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's a typical lens that you put on in any client engagement.
Yes, because that's actually one of the challenges we had between consultants. Consultants get a bad rap. We don't consider ourselves consultants. We consider ourselves their CFO, our client CFO, but part-time.
Yeah.
Consultants come in and solve the symptom. 80% of the time. You know, you have very few. You've brought in, you need a report for the bank. They come in and they give you the report for the bank. Well, next quarter, they have to call you because you can't get your report for the bank. Right? You have to fix the systems and processes, right? And then you don't have to come back every quarter to give the report for the bank. Your systems will do it for you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an example.
Wonderful. Well, to bring today's session to a close, I just want to revisit that Jim Collins quote. Each component in your flywheel isn't merely a next action step on the list, but almost an inevitable consequence of the step that came before. And that's Jim Collins. Yeah, perfect.
Well, that's not it. I'm trying to get to the slide. There you go, for people.
There it is. Yeah, that's a great way to wrap today's session. I want to give both Ale and Melanie, there's your website, which I'll drop into the chat for everyone's benefit. But as far as people staying in touch with you or following up, LinkedIn.
Yes, they can. LinkedIn, you can share this deck with them, and our information is at the last page of the deck. They can email us. Pick up the phone. We can. I'll be happy to give you my phone number. Just let me know how you want to. Planes, trains, and automobiles. Many ways to reach us.
Beautiful. Well, as promised, there will be a recording going out that will have that contact information at the end, and we'll start there, and hopefully let's do a phone call.
I can actually do something if people want to take a picture of it. Let me go there, and I am now like Vanna White. There we go. Okay. And share. There we go.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Also, just to call something else out in chat, I did put a quick link for a survey. If you can go ahead and fill that out, it always helps me how to frame these conversations and deliver value to our community and audience. I will also say that if you're new to Conscious Capitalism, first time joining one of our webinars, visit consciouscapitalism.org. You can learn more about our movement. And if you're a CEO, founder, or president, we would love to extend an invitation to our CEO Summit that's happening in October in Austin. I just dropped a link in the chat there as well. But to just kind of close out, a lot of calls to action in the chat. I'm going to step away from the chat. I just want to thank you both for today's time. I was delighted to have this conversation because I think a lot of when people tend to think CFO and finance, they feel that that department is very separate from maybe some of the more conscious parts of the organization. But I love how you kind of shared examples and insights on how you work with your clients. You gave us some good examples of clients who are practicing conscious business practices, financially benefiting from them. So thank you. For everyone else, I do want to just welcome any members of our Conscious Capitalism membership community. If you want to just drop into chat that you have a question for Melanie or Hale, feel free to drop that in the chat and we'll go ahead and bring you on screen. Chris, I know you're with us. We got to many of your questions. Greg, thank you. Yeah, Greg says, thank you, everyone. Love the line that everything touches money. So true. True indeed, Greg. I think one more call for any members who would just like to come on screen and ask questions directly. Chris, if you're still with us, again, I know we got to many of yours, but anyone else, just go ahead and drop into chat. Otherwise, we will wrap up today's webinar. And any final words? I don't mean to dominate the mic here.
They can go to our website, download the Revenue Flywheel tool we have. You can download a goals and strategy tool that has an area where what is your vision, and that's all available. We really want to give access to this information, and it's all on the website. So help yourself. And then if you need anything, say, I need help. We'd be happy to review it with you. So we're truly a purpose-driven organization. We truly want to give access to expert CFOs to small to medium businesses. So we're here to help.
Amazing. Well, thank you for those parting words. Link is in chat once again. And again, to close, thank you both. Thank you to everyone who joined us today.
Thank you.
Conversation.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah. Wishing you all a great rest of your week.
Thank you. Have a great day.